What's up, everybody? It's your boy London Bridge for Space Yacht Radio. Today, very excited to have on the show. Blanke is not in the building, but he's in a building.
I'm here. I'm here regardless.
in a building. You've got your dog there behind you, which I love. I should have brought mine. Although my dogs bark nonstop, so I don't know.
Oh, really? She's really good. She's been surprising. We've had her for about, I think, less than a week at the moment. So
oh, really?
We're still learning. Yeah. We decided to become fosters. Like we have a household of like 5 people, and we were like, why don't we, instead of adopting a dog, we foster them out and kind of like, we'll see how we go with them. But it's been really, really awesome so far.
That's amazing. I think a product of quarantine has been like a lot of new dog owners. I've heard that's like a thing.
Man. It's crazy. Yeah.
Which is good.
It's fantastic. I tried to adopt a cat and stuff back at my old place, and there was like a waiting list, and like the dogs here at the place that we fostered from, they're just like rolling through them. They're getting them out so quickly at the moment, which I think is fantastic.
Right. Right. It's because people are home and they have time to take care of the dogs. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love now I'm just thinking about my dogs and I love them so much.
It's they're so precious.
Well, thanks for being on the show. This was kind of like a last minute thing. What happened was on Tuesday, you played our Tuesday stream at Social Sanctuary. And you had said it before on Twitter that you were going to come with like an all drum and bass set. And I got to tell you, so I wasn't at the venue. I was kind of beamed in between sets and stuff, and because I'm pretty much like not leaving my house at all. And I watched it and was in the chat as well. And I'm telling you, the response from the chat was like people were like crying in the chat. They were so happy.
No way.
No, because
really?
It was like, yeah. And the other thing I thought, which was, and I want to get into your kind of normal music as well, but just about that specific set is I felt like I was watching like a boxer who had like trained and like went into the ring and was like, anything could happen. It doesn't matter. You can't fucking fight. You can't phase me because I'm ready to fucking throw down.
Right.
A lot of times when artists will play a set that's not their kind of normal genre that they play all the time, it might be a little timid. It might be just a little rough around the edges. I was watching your set and I was like, hold on, wait, this isn't your normal shit. Like you were just throwing it down. So I wanted to start because we're going to listen. Your guest mix is going to be some of that that set. What was your thought process? You're saying, okay, I'm going to go in on a drum and bass tip. Like, what was your thought process when you put that set together? Like in like
that's
the making of that set.
I love that. I love that. That's like because that's the aim. That's absolutely the aim. Like if I'm going to do something different, I don't want to be doing it half-assed, and I don't want it to look like that I've just kind of done it for the sake of doing it. Because it's not the best feeling for you, and then like it's not the best feeling for the audience either. They're kind of going, oh, anything could, maybe he's going to stuff this mix up. I'm like, no, I don't want to go in with people thinking that, because that makes people feel uneasy about the set. Like I've watched sets like that, like you've said before, and it's just like it's not a good feeling. So, but I mean, like I said on the night, I've been into drum and bass for a while, but like Pendulum got me into this whole thing. So it's like, they've always kind of had this thing in my heart, but drum and bass has always kind of fascinated me, and it's always been like just hovering around me. I haven't really gotten to play it too much before, but now that, 2020 is kind of drum and bass year, like it's kind of getting that little bit of momentum. So I was like, this is great. Like, why don't I do this? Like, there's no better time, because you guys are really good with that kind of thing. I felt like it was a really comfortable space to be able to do that and be able to present that kind of thing, that kind of side of me. So, and I'm looking more into like my actual productions and stuff. I'm looking more into doing a bit more drum and bass. So it seemed like a good time to do it.
Yeah, I and it's very true. What you said was kind of drum and bass 2020, which has kind of become a meme. Yeah. And I really started recognizing it kind of when quarantine really started, was when I'm like, wait, does everybody now produce drum and bass? Everybody loves drum and bass, and
everyone's getting on that wagon.
Yeah, but it's good. I mean, I'm with you. It's like my first electronic music that I got into was drum and bass back in the 90s, and like to see it kind of start to get some juice and like love from America, because obviously it's huge in Europe and UK. It's like, that's what's always funny. They're like, what are you talking about? This is old music to us. This isn't like a new thing. Whereas in America, it's a very kind of, it's almost fresh in a way, even though it's like almost a 30-year-old genre. But it's like, but are you feeling that in what you're seeing, in other producers? Like there's a wave, right? Don't you feel like there's a wave?
I feel like there's something. I feel like it's a different genre for people to kind of jump into, because it's I think that there is definitely a way there's people talking about it, but I don't know if there's that many people doing it, and they are trying to do it. But because I think it is a little bit different to what they would usually make, it is harder for people to kind of nail. And I'm kind of glad that people aren't putting out half-assed drum and bass records just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
You know, there's been people tweeting about like, you know, you got to get the friggin' drums right. Like I remember Harrison from Dead Bass is like, if you're going to drum and bass, make sure you make the drums right. Like they have to be short and snappy and like all that kind of thing. So I'm like, I'm glad that people are looking into that, because it just gives this, like, as you say, this fantastic genre, like a bit more of like a platform, a bit more, you know, exposure to people who wouldn't usually get to see it. And I think it's funny because it's like, I find it to be the most danceable music, but people don't think that.
Yeah. No, that's the thing is, right. It's like always the idea is like, oh yeah, I went to an after party, they're playing drum and bass and everyone's just kind of standing there. And I'm like, no, like exactly. That's not, it makes me want to move immediately.
So much.
But what I was thinking about was like, as a producer, you seem very suited to be able, if you know, to get into that, because I just listening through your productions, you actually use very versatile, different kind of sound. And I feel like a very like, you're constantly progressing, whereas like kind of maybe some of the stuff from a little bit maybe like last year is like more of an aggressive like mid-tempo vibe to it, you know, like definitely like the Rez stuff, even like the J Code record, whereas this last release that you just put out almost has like the rhythm chop thing going on, like heavy. And I actually wanted to quote what it says. It's on your social media. You know, you say, "Hi, I love making cheesy melodic music that makes you want to cry just as much as I love making music that sounds like the apocalypse. Don't say I didn't warn you." And when I read that and then like really like leafing through all your stuff, I was like, it's so true. Like your highs and lows, like you're like emotionally highs with like these really like luscious records. Like what was the one from like Fragile Violence? Like that was the one where I'm like, this is like super melodic and uplifting. Or even like that Slander remix you did, like super like emotional, like high, like big vocal. And then Control, this new record is just like, no, fuck you, I'm gonna punch you in the face. So like, how do you negotiate that? Are you just in the studio kind of like making whatever feels right, or are you like making like a move to say, okay, no, on Control, for example, like I'm going to take those rhythm influences and bring it? Like, how's that kind of work in the studio?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those feeling things. I made Control when I was on the road with Black Tiger Sex Machine. That was like, you know, one of the things I'd make in one of the cafes that we stopped at each day type thing. It was one of those type, but it actually started out as a sound design session. Like I was just making like new, to me, fairly like new sounds, and I was kind of like trying new techniques, and I came up with all these things, and I was like, this is sick. I want to try and make a song out of this. And it kind of originally was sort of like just a DJ tool for me to play live, and then it kind of kept working on it, and I kept really enjoying it, and I was like, why don't we put this out type thing? So it can come like any way sort of thing. It really depends. Sometimes it's just what I'm feeling, and then other times it's like this remix, for example, will feel really good as a mid-tempo record, or feel really good as like a melodic mid-tempo record, or it definitely needs this kind of like melodic dub thing to it. And I suppose that's why I've taken on so many remixes, because a lot of my discography is like remixes, I guess, because like I feel like I can do and I enjoy doing all of these different styles. I'm not like, if like say I get a stem or a song that's at 100 BPM, I can do 100 BPM. I don't have to be like, oh, I'm a dub artist, so I can't take that on. So diversity has definitely been a huge part of what I've kind of grown into the project to be.
No, and you can kind of tell, because I feel like for you, did you go to school like for production? Because I feel like all of your productions have a very polished way about them. It's all so what was your, you know, for the producers who listen to the show, like what was your move in terms of getting started and kind of getting on a roll like that on the production side?
I mean, it took a while. Like I've been producing for a minute. I've been DJing since I was like 17 and a half, and I'm like 28 now, so I've been DJing for like a decade, which is weird. And I was producing probably a couple of years after that, and I started out on Logic because, you know, DJing was just kind of like the natural step. It was like I was playing, and then I was like, how do I make this stuff? Because I was like a guitarist and everything as well. This is like the general kind of story, is that, you know, I wanted to be able to, like, I didn't work in a band, and I was too selfishly creative, so I ended up figuring out how to work Logic, and like I could do, you know, the guitar and the bass and the drums and the songwriting and like all that kind of stuff, and that was really appealing to me. And so I just kind of read as many books as I could, watch as many YouTube tutorials as I could, try to find like the right things to watch. And I was really into like the mixing side of it, so I watched a lot of like mixing tutorials and mixing guys like Dave Pensato and like all those sorts of guys. I watched them do their stuff, and I thought that was the most fascinating shit. That's kind of potentially why my stuff might sound polished to other people, not to me. Obviously, it's never right. But yeah, that might be why, because I spent a lot of time learning the mixing side of things.
Right.
So I really enjoy that sort of like, it's almost logical, but it's almost creative at the same time. Like there's going to be a space for each separate thing, each part of the song. So like, how do I make this work?
Right.
And so I find that to be extremely kind of, fascinating and sort of intuitive now. So yeah, it's
well, also coming from a band background and music background, I do feel like there's a difference in terms of like understanding how to approach music. It doesn't mean you'll be a better producer.
No.
It just means that like you have a guitar in the background, like you obviously understand like music from the core. And I always feel like, never discouraging someone who doesn't play music, because there's plenty of producers who are like, I just was like a gamer and then I picked up Ableton.
And they're
so
what I mean? Good too. Yeah.
Right. And it's different, but I do feel like the understanding of how important the mix is, that's like a very music person thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm hearing all these demos submitted to us. Like that's one of our big notes, which is like, yeah, cool. Like whether these are sample pack samples or you made these samples, the sounds sound good, but it sounds like shit together because it's all just mushed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good tip for anyone listening, is like understand the importance of space, within your mix. You know what I mean? Like space is like everything, and like where things go. Like another tip I got from my friend who's in Bonnie and Clyde, he said, when in doubt, just turn it down. He's like, volume like 90% of the time is your issue.
Literally.
It's
all gain. Like it's all gain. So, cause I do a lot of mixing and mastering for like clients and younger guys, and I do some mentoring and stuff now too. And the whole, I remember hearing this years ago from from like an interview I was reading from like a mix engineer. And he was just like, I'd be able to make a better sounding mix than you would with no tools. I'd be able to do it just by gain staging. I'd be able to make a better mix than what you could do with everything. And I was like, what the hell? Like, how does that work? But now I'm like, that's absolutely right. Like if you can get the volumes and the gain staging right, then it's like, it just makes all the kind of difference. On top of that, it's also to do with like sample selection. I found that to be like the biggest part of this whole thing. If your kick's shit, it probably just isn't going to, it's not if it's shit, if it's not the right kick, then it's not going to come through in the right way, depending on what song you're doing. So yeah.
Right. Do you feel like having, like, since you do so many remixes, do you feel like having like an assignment is helpful to you, because like you have a place to start? Like, do you find that the remix is easier for you than the original in terms of like, as a place to begin?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I say, because you've got this kind of like, you've got a direction already. Like you've got this vocal, there is a song there. So therefore you can work on it a lot. It's just, it kind of flows out of you a little bit easier, because it's kind of, there's things telling you what to do. That was kind of like my thing with writing songs and writing remixes and stuff. It's like, what is this song like telling you to do? Like just listen to it and listen to what this next part is supposed to be. And so that was kind of a big thing for me. So yeah, I think so. Yeah. Remixes
I mean, it just in general, it's like, it takes some of the pressure away from like, all right, where do I start? Starting is the hardest thing for everyone. Right? It's just like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, a blank canvas is like the absolute most daunting thing in the world for a lot of people, for sure. Being able to get through that is a skill in itself, I think.
Right. There was some writer who always said like, never start with a blank page, or some cliche discussion of that. But I always think that that's true. And you can take, even if you're writing an original, you can take that to like, okay, well, if you have this like drum loop that you like, start with that, fuck with it. Tweak it, like,
absolutely. Like I said, with Control, the way that came about was a sound design session. It wasn't like I started off with a blank slate. It was like I went in there and just started making ridiculous noises. And so by the end of it, I was like, that one sounds really cool, and so does that one. Let's try and make some freaking tear out dubstep with it.
Right. I'm loving tear out's like my new shit. I really like I make house music. I'm a house guy. That's kind of what I'm known. But then just through the process of being part of Space Yacht and, seeing it, like I'm at every show, so I see everybody. Like tear out has kind of turned into my new thing, like my secret.
So funny.
It's so dope.
It's dope.
I just want to put my fucking fist in the air. Like it's so
aggressively ignorant. It's so
it's great. But do you feel like, okay, so on that tip of like, you do, the majority of what you're doing is kind of in the dubstep realm of things.
Yeah.
Do you find that, is there kind of any kind of snobbiness between like the sub genres within it? Like, do you find any of that? Because I know it's like some people are like, oh, that's not tear out, or though that's
right.
It's like, do you find that, or is that not really in your
I'm just not that involved in it.
Yeah.
Purely because I'm not that kind. I'm not a purist in that sense, like because I do so much different music, I'm not in like one of those kind of cliques or whatever.
Right.
So I just kind of make what I make, and I don't really get in the politics or all that kind of thing. So yeah, no, I don't really get involved.
That's another pro tip. Just don't listen to what other people are saying. Just fucking
don't, man. Yeah, the toxicity is shit.
Do shit. Back on the production tip, I did. This is something new I've been asking everybody. Is like, do you have one or two kind of things that you do on every single song, like a trick or a tip? Like for me, I use Kickstart on every one of my kicks. Like that's kind of what I always do. Do you have like one or two tips that like is like a winner for those who are production people? Or you can keep it secret. You say,
yeah, no,
you might have to kill me if you tell me. But
I'm just trying, there's probably a whole bunch of shit. I have a template that I always use. I have this like mix routing thing that I learned from like San Holo and someone else. I was like an A and a B mix, and the A mix has just the kick and the snare, and the B mix has everything else. So basically what it does is it gets the side chaining to be at the very, very, very last minute of like the end of the processing. And so nothing gets brought back up. So it has like, to me, it has this really clean side chain sound, because the only thing after it is maybe like a sausage fattener or something, which isn't getting pushed at all, because I'm mixing through it, as opposed to I'm not mixing and then putting something on after and then pushing everything back up. It's kind of like I mixed through everything.
Right.
That doesn't make too much sense in a short form, but that's one thing that I do a lot. And I think that's probably my main thing right now that I do all the time. But yeah, I mean, there's like sounds and stuff that I use, but I have a kick that I have 3 or 4 kicks that I made that I always use.
But like those are the kicks.
Those seem to be the kicks that just work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I changed the top kick
mean.
maybe, but like the transient, but like the sub is always really good. It was from a Space Laces thing. I was like, why does this shit sound so good? And I was like, went and analyzed the crap out of it. And his kicks and snares and stuff are just like they're so subby, they're so low compared to a lot of kicks. They're like quite high, like a few tones, semitones higher up in the register. And so like his ones seem to sit nice and like deep. So I just kind of adopted that.
Once you can find the kicks that work, then it's like it's kind of freeing. I remember like it's happened. Yeah, I mean I've been producing forever, and just recently in the last couple of years where I'm like, here are the 4 or 5. Like I'm making a house tune, like here are the 4 or 5 kicks. That's it, and I'm probably just using the same one most of the time.
They just work.
But it's a good thing, because a lot of times, to your point about like you start with a template, I think it can be important to get those set up so that you don't have to do the whole just like start from scratch thing again. It's like that can be just like a process that gets you derailed, where you're like, well, none of these sound right together. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, totally. I find that to be like, I think for my creativity, having the shitty things streamlined is like I have all my all my samples and folders like really organized. I have my projects really organized, because that to me just means I don't have to think about anything outside of like what I'm doing at that point in time creatively. Right. That to me has been really helpful for sure. Right. No, I feel that. So we're gonna get into your guest mix in a little bit, but I did want to kind of talk a little bit about, not about quarantine so much, because I don't want to be a downer, but the streaming. Streaming has become like the huge thing. You just had a huge set on Digital Mirage, which everybody, the social media fucking went crazy for that one. You did ours. What's been your personal take, but like both as an artist and a fan, on the streaming stuff? Like, so for you, like, do you enjoy playing those streaming sets, or are you kind of, oh man, like I'm doing this, but I can't wait to get back out there? Like, what's your take on that whole? Yeah. Okay. So like I was on tour with BDSM, like I mentioned before, at the start of the year, and that got cut short due to all of this stuff going on. And like, it kind of went from this playing in a different city, literally every night, every day, and having new crowds and all that stuff, to being like 2 days later to being like inside my apartment and like not being able to leave. Right. So to me, that was like such a crazy kind of shift. And then having to be like, oh, I need to learn how to stream. I need to get all this equipment. I need to do this, that, and the other thing. So it was like a huge learning curve. But it was, it's been stressful, to be honest. And I mean, there's just so much to learn, which is great. And like, I think it's been good to be able to kind of push yourself in that kind of direction. Like a lot of us have to adjust and have to adapt. And like, that's been, I think, a good exercise for us, for sure. Yeah. I mean, doing the DJ sets have been
really fun because you get to be creative, but they also, again, like I say, have been like quite stressful only because like, I've definitely made sure like to myself to say that I'm never going to play like the same set. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to play that Digital Mirage set on another stream or like record that somewhere else. I've done 3 or 4 or 5 guest mixes and like these different streams and stuff, and they all are different. Like they're all totally different sets. So like having to like redo, like I've gotten pretty good at putting sets together now, but like having to make new ones has been interesting. But I mean, like it's really good again for your creativity, and like it pushes us and makes us do better.
It's totally true. It's forcing us to be real DJs in terms of like, you can't just say, oh, well, there's these chunks of stuff in the set, and you might be freestyling set, but you know those 3 or 4 songs that worked well together, like those kind of crutches that you use. And by the way, in a live set, it's cool. Like those kids didn't see that set, so it's not like a bad thing. It's just something that's helpful to us to be able to be like confident there. But to your point, it's like, but actually, we're as DJs, we should be. Oh, everyone should be fresh. It should always be something new. And do you find like? For me, I found myself more nervous because I feel like there's nowhere to hide in the mistakes. Like live, it's like if something happens, like, whatever, we move on. But like you're plugged into the fucking channel right into the stream.
Man, okay, yeah. For the Space Yacht set, that was more or less completely freeform. Like I didn't plan that out at all, sort of thing. And that was one of the first times I had done that in a long time, because the tour and stuff had like a fairly similar set. Because that was something that I would work, because I guess sets to me are just like one big sort of like song journey adventure, and you spend time putting that together and piecing that together in a certain way to portray a certain feeling and give that to the crowd. And like this is like something I worked on for a long time, along with all my other songs and all that kind of stuff. So it's like I have no shame in saying that, like, the set is similar the whole way across the tour, because I worked the fuck out of that. Like I want you guys to see that. But like, being able to sort of go back to DJing roots and like really freeform it and sort of do that kind of drum and bass set was a lot of fun, to be honest.
No, it was, again, like the confidence and just like, it was just super on point. And also just like, like I said before, like watching the chat reaction is different from like the crowd reaction, but it is something, you know what I mean? Like seeing the way people react, whether it's with emotes or what they're saying, or like, let's go with like 100 O's after the G, like that's something. And I felt like your entire set was people just being like, oh my God, like I can't believe what's going on. It was awesome.
That's so great to hear. I was really interested in how that would actually kind of go down, whether people would be like, okay, this is interesting, or whether they'd be like actually into it, because I had to deliver it in that kind of way too. So that was kind of like daunting, but I could just play like a bunch of drum and bass and not put it together well, and then it could be like, oh yeah, this is all right. But
there's always this thing with people being like kind of giving shade to people, like, oh, well, that's not your genre, like at least in house, like when everyone started making house music like last year or whatever. But I like it. I want to see how people flex on like different styles, and to me it shows that like you have more chops as a producer or a DJ if you're able to go and do these different styles of things. So for me, I'm always all about it, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I feel you.
So, well, anyway, I'm really stoked, because up next we have your kind of guest mix is the live set, the drum and bass that we've been talking about from Space Yacht. So that's what we're going to go into. And I'd love to have you on the show another time. We can talk more about kind of other things as well. But
dude, I'd love to.
But again, thank you so much for playing that show on Tuesday, and thanks for being here. Really just super stoked with how that all went down. It's great.
I'm so glad to hear. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was like super fun on Tuesday night, and like, this is great. So thank you so much.
Well, hopefully when we get out of quarantine, we'll do it again, but we'll do it IRL in a real place with real people.
Cannot wait.
You know what I mean?
Hell yeah, dude.
All right. Well, thank you to Blanke, we were just chatting. I'm going to edit that. Thank you. Thank you to Blanke for being on the show. And we are going into a guest mix from Blanke, a little bit of drum and bass for your ass. It's your boy London Bridge for Space Yacht Radio. Thanks for being on the show. And
thank you.
We're going into a guest mix from Blanke. We'll catch you next week on the Flippy Flop.